So I'm Sid Markle, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm going to be helping host this SIG this year. And I'm really excited to be here. It is the Austin Agile Coach Meetup. I think you all know where you are, but that's where we are. So Erin, if you'll take us to the next slide. So this is our mission. This is the Agile Austin mission. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're here to connect people, foster professional growth through collaborative events like this one, which educate our community on uncovering better ways to deliver value through agile values, principles, and practices. Now, it doesn't say anything about disruption in there, but based on the question we heard earlier, maybe we ought to consider that for the future. I'm just kidding. So if you are interested in sponsoring Agile Austin, we welcome that. And for more information, you can email us at contact@agileaustin.org. Also, if you'd like to join our membership, the membership fee is $35. It's highly worth it. I highly recommend it. There are lots of benefits, including being part of this beautiful community. Again, you can go to agilileaustin.org to learn more about that. Okay.
Now it goes.
All right, so these are lovely board members. We heard from Max earlier. He's joined us. We've got Steve, who's our actual Steve Martin. It's not the actor, it's a different Steve Martin, but we still love him very much. He's the vice president and our chief operating officer. Carrie Sudi is our chief product officer. Leland Newsom is our chief learning officer. Adam Lee brings us all kinds of technology innovations. And we have Scott Killen, who is one of the founding members, I believe, of that.
This is a
and he's treasurer.
different organization I'm reading about.
I'm gonna ask everyone besides Sid and Gabby to go on mute.
There we go.
Just a quick reminder.
All
Thanks,
right,
y'all.
so these are our lovely board members, and we all voted for them, and we love them. And let's see what's next. Okay, so these are the different Agile Austin meetups that are available. We have this one, which you're in. We also have a few others that you might be interested in, and I highly recommend many of them, including the book club. And Ned, who leads that one, is on, and that's just a fantastic group to go through and read things together and talk. So that's the one I'm going to plug tonight. All right. What's next? All right. We're also looking for volunteers. So if you've got a special interest in serving our community, especially around social media support, we are looking for you. So come help us out. Also, if you're interested in leading a special interest group or any other ideas, bring them. It's the volunteers that really make the community come alive, and so please join us.
All right, so both Sid and myself are your fearless hosts this year. My name's Erin Randall, and I'm an ORSC coach, a coactive coach, as well as an Agile coach, those three things. And Sid is, as I just reminded myself tonight, she's been at IBM for over 20 years at this point, but she's also over in the strategy and business transformation department now in the office of the CIO. But together we will host this circle every month, and we're going to bring lots of different ideas forward. So we'll meet here the first Monday. We'll bring people on at 6:15 p.m. Central Time, and we'll be here for about an hour, and then we'll let you all go home because, like Max says, we start on time, we end on time. But we're also really good with this meetup about trying different things, and we try to bring different voices forward. You'll also note that we still kind of have one-off sessions. I know that we're planning one on clean feedback coming up in April. So we're trying to bring things not that you would just expect to come forward, but things that we're also seeing surface in our community. All right, and this then is our upcoming lineup. In March, we'll have Rob Purdy here. He's going to be talking about being agile, mindset drives behavior, and behavior drives results. And in April, Sid, our very own Sid, is going to be talking about organizational change, a coaching journey. And then finally in May, Michael Ackerbauer will be here talking about mindful agility and finding balance. But tonight, this is the main event. And I'm going to ask everyone again to go on mute. Just as a reminder, we love all the voices, but right now I need to have Gabby's voice start coming forward. So Gaby Aragon is here tonight from Roche, where she's going to be talking about organizational transformation, but beyond agility. And this is a really special session, and it's one that's very close to my heart, just because Gaby has been with Roche for almost 20 years at this point and moved from Europe specifically down to Costa Rica to begin a transformation down in that area. And we're seeing such tremendous results and impact in so many different ways that I could not help but ask her to come forward and share with this audience what's been happening there and the impact that it's been having. So with that, like I said, Gaby, she's been there a long time, but she's also an organizational coach. She just finished her certification last month. She's a coactive coach, but she is so much more than her initials. And honestly, everyone, she is one of my very favorite people in the universe. Also, Shane Hasty, I still love you. So, you are too, just saying. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn this over to Gaby.
Thank you, Erin. What a beautiful welcome. And I'm not obviously sitting in Austin, but I'm here in Costa Rica. I hope you accept me because you have pretty interesting topics coming up. So I'm like, oh, I want to register. I want to get in there. Do you accept Costa Ricans in here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, another thing, as Erin said, the idea is that I am able to share as much as possible everything we've been through. So please, if you have questions, if I'm not clear with anything, let me know. My mother tongue is Spanish. I grew up in the United States for 10 years, then went back to Costa Rica and lived 20 years in Basel, Switzerland. So I've had a bit of a run through different places in my life. And as Erin said, a year and a half ago, I really felt the urge of coming back to Costa Rica. And it was just on the perfect time that there was this transformation was happening. So they needed somebody like me. They just didn't know it. And when they did, what I mean is that they didn't know it, is that I remember having this one-to-one with the general manager, Alvaro, which is kind of my partner in crime for all this transformation. And explaining him what I was doing, right? And I could see that his understanding and his level of, the knowledge of systemic coaching and systemic development, he was trying to grasp it. And that's how it happened around the whole company as well. He was trying to grasp it, but it wasn't really known here. And to give you a bit of sense of it's not known in this area, I am the only certified systemic coach in the whole country and in Central America mostly, right? So I think Mexico has a few systemic coaches, but basically when we looked for other people with similar backgrounds, it was non-existent. So you can imagine that the level of understanding of this knowledge and how to work in this mindset and really putting emphasis in how do you help people in an individual dimension and in a systemic dimension was really unknown. So the group itself is a pioneer group. We don't have in the rest of Roche any group that is called systemic development. We actually put the name together because we knew that the learning was never going to stop and that we would have to advance and the organization would advance with us in this learning path and it would never stop, right? We know that when the transformation started, we would get to a certain point. And yet we got to a certain point, and what's the next point? And what's the next one? And what's the next one? Which made it clear that this was going to be an ever-evolving area, okay? So I wanted to give you a bit of context of this. Is there any question that I saw there, Gaby, systemic development?
Not yet. I'm just seeing a lot of people. There's a lot of chatter over in the chat box tonight, which is good. Okay. Sherry's really wonderful. She does a lot of transcription on the fly as part of this. So yeah.
Great. So I'm just gonna, I prepared, well, I can't take the credit. It was my communication group that prepared this. Here we go. Here we go. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Can everybody see the slides? Okay, great.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is the symbol that basically is the symbol of this program. As I said, this is an area, but the program, the umbrella that is taking this transformation forward is, we gave it one name because the name was providing the intention, and it's called EVOKE. EVOKE as we want to evoke in each other that change. We want to evoke in each other that potential. We want to evoke in each other everything that we're going together, right? So we're starting from an intention of, we know that the people that are within the organization have the potential. What we are trying to give them is the skills and the systemic muscle to achieve where we want to go, right? So this is a symbol that you would always see in our program, because we're always trying to kind of challenge each other. And what do you want to evoke? What do you want to amplify in others? And how do you want to amplify that as a team as well? So there's always a why in a transformation, as you all probably are coaches. I'm assuming all of you are mostly coaches, right, in this group. And I'm assuming that as well, you've been through several transformations. There's always a why. And our why can be summarized in ensure that our innovation is available to patients as quickly as possible. And the way that we were working before, and for this, I think this image says it pretty explicitly, is I need you to almost adopt the mindset probably, or the way of thinking and the way of feeling of somebody that is going through this transformation, because our previous state was based on Costa Rica being the hub where the strategy was created, and it was sent to the different countries, and all those countries that you see there are part of our region. So this is a region, right? And the hub was creating the strategy, and they were creating it, and they gave it to the countries, and the countries would implement it. So what can you imagine are the biggest challenges of doing that, right? And let's start by all the Caribbean countries, they speak English, and all the Central American countries, they speak Spanish. So we already have a language barrier. Then we have all the cultures, all the different cultures that are across all this region. Very different contexts, very different challenges, very, very different. And imagine Costa Rica creating the strategy and saying to others, okay, go on and implement. What can, maybe in the chat, like, what are the typical challenges when this happens that you can imagine?
I'm seeing lack of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone feel free to spew forth over in the chat with the challenges Gabby was describing, what's going to come up in a system. Command and control, not our idea, so why are we going to do it? Countries don't see themselves in the strategy, different priorities, silos, hard for local differences to bubble up at HQ, overall miscommunication.
Yeah, all of those and more. All of those and more. So the transformation was, how do we go from centralized to decentralized? How do we equip every country with the expertise they need so they create the strategy? They know their patients, they know their area, they know their context, and they can use the expertise of the hub of Costa Rica, but they know better. They know their context. So imagine what it is for somebody to start thinking different, and instead of implementing, being the one that suddenly I have to create. And for the other ones that were the ones that created the strategy, the other way, right? So it's almost like this shift of the mindset that happens. So that's what brings us to the what's of why, you know, what this whole transformation, and what did we do? So these were the two approaches, the main two approaches to help through the mindset shift. As I said at the beginning, there was an individual dimension that we knew we had to help each person like almost cross their own edge. Like what does this transformation need from me? So if I'm the one first that I used to implement and now I have to create, what does that mean that I have to change in me? What is that area of growth that I need for myself? And then there's the other dimension of how are we going to be together? Now we have these new teams, these new experts working together. And now our relationship is changing with the other networks and all the different countries. How do we learn from each other? We're all going through the same journey with different contexts, but we still can leverage the learnings of each other, right? So the strategy we created for what we call EVOKE was based on that. We need to tackle the individual dimension and the teams and network dimension. How did we want to be conscious and intentionally in relationship? Is everybody following me? Yep. Oh, okay, I see some heads nodding. So how did that look like? From the individual perspective, it was about giving the organization skills, right? So what we did is we knew what mindsets we needed in the organization, which were identified as 6. So what are they? Network mindset, enterprise mindset, growth mindset, challenger thinking mindset. These types of mindsets we knew we needed. Digital mindset. And then in each one of these mindsets, what are the skills that we can equip our people that could really help them through this transformation, right? So that's one area. So that's half of the puzzle. Not that it's straightforward, but it's half of the puzzle. The other half of the puzzle was the system. How do we build the systemic muscle? How do we start embracing that everybody's right only partially? That we can hold these principles that we learn at ORSC, right? Or these competencies or these tools. Like, how can we be with each other, knowing that we can learn from each other, right? So it was, how do we build those intentional relationships within every single team at Roche? So how did we do that? And I have to start with the preconditions, because now that the results are happening, so last year was our best year that we actually achieved getting to patients more than ever in the history for this region. Now that we're getting results and all the other countries are saying, what are these guys doing? What are they doing different, right? And so everybody starts saying, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. And then we have this conversation, the one that I'm going to have with you right now. And then they start changing their minds because what you need for this to work are these 3 preconditions. And the number one already scares a lot of people, which is radical responsibility. Radical responsibility from leadership to the end. Everybody is in the same boat. And we need this radical responsibility to constantly ask ourselves, what is my responsibility of what's happening right now? How can I help with what's happening right now? What can I support right now? What is my part in this? And it's going to feel uncomfortable. And if you're not ready to feel uncomfortable, this is not for you. This program is definitely not for you. And it's about that. You're going to keep growing, and keep growing is uncomfortable. But you need to be ready to be that, right? And as I said, my partner in crime has been the GM, which he does this. He spends the time in the sessions with me. He goes and gives context. He's ready to give, be vulnerable, to provide his stories, his origin stories. Then when you see that happening, what is the ripple effect that can happen? What is possible from there, right? When you see someone like that, that it, from the up is saying, I'm with you. I'm not for you, I'm with you here. And I think that's incredibly important. The other part is lean into conflict. So instead of going like, oh, no, let's just not talk about that, or let's not do that, we should be actually doing the opposite. Let's go there. Let's get curious. What's happening there? There's tension in this ecosystem, in this country ecosystem. What's happening here? How can we help? So it's leaning in and actually getting curious. And the last one is trusting that the answers are always in the team. Because the problems are so complex. And you can imagine countries like Barbados, Jamaica, Cuba. Like, can you imagine the amount of complex issues day by day that they are constantly overcoming? So you need to trust that those people that are in the country, they can find the answers. They have probably the answers. They need brainstorming. They need other minds that inspire them, that maybe help them with powerful questions. But it's having those 3 components.
Gabby, before you go into the next slide, there was one question over in the chat about, could you just retouch those 6 mindsets that you mentioned at the very beginning?
Yeah. So I'll give you all of them. I have them right in here just to be sure that I don't forget. Not because I don't know them, but growth mindset and challenger thinking as one, enterprise mindset, sustainable productivity mindset, because for us it was important prioritization, network mindset, value creation and customer focus, and digital mindset. Is that clear? Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So when I was talking about skills that go in it, I'm just going to give you an example. So for example, when we talk about challenger thinking, we need skills on feedback, psychological safety, how to have courageous conversations. Those are the type of skills that we map into the program. Okay. So how does this journey always start? So this is a journey that 230 people have been through, where they start with having a 1.5 workshop day, right? Fortunately, we had a gap between COVID and Omicron, and we could have, when we did most of these, we just had one virtual, no, actually 2 virtual workshops. All the rest were face-to-face with all the measures, of course. But we were lucky enough that we could have that space where we would do leadership circle profile. That's our backbone, the leadership circle profile. And out of that, the 2 outputs that we get from every team is their individual commitment of how they want to be in the journey, like what's their growing edge, and a team design team alliance, right? So they continue the journey in this lane of having feedback every month. And that's where Rudy plays an important part, because he's built People Analytics, which is a group of pioneers as well at Roche, where they have built these dashboards and background where people can see what are they working on, what are they going to start doing, what are they going to stop doing, how does that look like? And they get 3 people, 2 from their team and 1 from the network, to basically provide feedback on a monthly basis. So they can see in their dashboard, in a visualization, they can see, oh, I'm growing. Oh, actually, I need to get better at this. I'm getting this feedback. They can see the curve of change through 6 months, right? Which is our aim. And at the same time, we get data out of that to understand patterns and trends that are happening across the organization. And then the other output is the Design Team Alliance, which is helping that muscle of being intentional in relationship. The other very important part of EVOKE are the modules. And those are the modules where we have the skills. And when I refer to these modules give you a skill, it's not the typical training module where you come in and you give a skill, you practice it, and that's it. Actually, we spend 60 to 70% of the time in conversation and reflection, because the trick here is not so much the skill. The trick is adding the context, adding the organizational moment, and saying, how does this affect me? Where am I here? And where do I want to be? In every single skill. Where am I today? Where do I want to be? And it's through the conversation that the aha moments happen. So the person that is facilitating this is a team coach. It cannot be anybody that is not a team coach, because what they are constantly doing is revealing the system to itself, basically reflecting back. Oh, we see this and we hear this and we're sensing this. So what's possible from there? How does this inform you? How does this help you? Because when that happens, they have the option, or the conscious option, to change their course, to decide better, to be intentional, right? So even though it sounds like the simple part, I would say this is the most skillful part, that the people that give EVOKE have to be very skillful at team coaching. Right, Erin?
Yes.
You're one of the coaches, so
Yes.
you know this by heart?
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously, if somebody would ask me, okay, but all this effort, where are you going? Like, where are you heading towards? We do have the probably, I don't know, I'm not going to call it dream. We have the intention probably of getting to this learning organization and making all these skills sustainable, and that people start actually not only learning the skills, but also giving back the skills and being influencers internally and externally. And for that, the way the program is built is because we want to give that foundation of people feeling safe. That concept of leaning into conflict is because it should be okay to say, I don't agree. Hey, I feel tension here. What's this about? And so on. Also, having a common language and a common understanding helps so much to accelerate transformation. It's incredible, because and I'm going to give you already one of the biggest learnings we had. We started only with ecosystems. And by half of the year, so we started with them for half of the year. By the half of the year, we knew we had done something not that probably it's not wrong, but it was a huge learning. We should have started with the whole organization, because then the enabling functions, the people that were in the hub in Costa Rica were like, these people are talking different, they're acting different, they're being different. What's happening here? And why are we not there too? Right? So one of the biggest learning is, if you can take people through the process together. We yes, because of specific context and circumstances, we started like that. And immediately after 6 months, we saw that it was not going to work like that. We had to change. We had to learn and grow too.
Abby, I'm going to bring Wayne's question forward.
Yeah,
One
sure.
of his 2 questions right now. He's asking, how often did you learn something that caused you to take a different approach?
Oh my God, a lot.
Daily.
A lot, because I would say the whole EVOKE modules, how it started to refine, because I remember, because I came in alone doing this work, right? In this moment, we have a pool of 12 coaches plus 5 core members, plus people analytics, plus I have 2 permanent employees. So that was built from June, July last year. But I started September 2020 in this journey. So I had to learn a lot by myself and in me. And then I had Rudy, and I had the people of people analytics. And then I had a great partner, which was Alvaro, that we were always bouncing back ideas. But there was so much tweaked and optimized and changed during the path, but we were always clear that that was going to be the case, that this was a complex matter, and it was always going to be like that. I don't know if that helped you. Who had the question?
Wayne had that. And he's also asking if it was better to transform the entire thing or just a small piece at first.
So, well, we started, I can't tell you in retrospective, because we started with the small piece was all the countries, but that wasn't a small piece, right? That was half of the 230. But we started in phases, right? The first country would go, then the second, and then it would be like in a parallel way. And honestly, the conclusion today is we would have done it all at least together, enabling functions and ecosystems, to avoid the enabling functions feeling left out, and to avoid not having the same language, not having the same behaviors as well, because the ecosystems would start to develop this more intentional way of being in relationship, and it kind of didn't fit the old way of working of the other teams. And I guess many of you have seen that before, right? So I can tell you from my lens what I've lived, and I'm sure there's better ways as well.
I'm going to bring one more question forward here before I let you start moving through. Gregory is asking, how easy or how difficult was it to establish psychological safety, and why?
I can't tell you we have it. Let's start by that, right? I'm telling you, we work at it every day. And I'm just going to give you a quick example. Today, we had a coaching session with one of the countries, and we were in a very courageous conversation. And it was something that the team, it was dear to the team. And there's these teachable moments, what we call in the leadership team, these teachable moments that you have to grab and say, this tension, what we're feeling right now, look how psychological safe we are that we can actually talk about this. This is difficult, and still we can talk about it. So I can tell you that we work at it every day. Do we have it completely solved? Probably not. I think psychological safety is something like, it takes a lot of work to build, and you can really bring it down so easily with your own actions, with not having that radical responsibility. I don't know if that helped.
Gregory says at least he's not alone. All right, Gabby, continue forward.
Well, and another thing we realized was the narratives in the context, because I don't know if you work with leadership teams in the past where You go into a meeting, there's this new thing that they have to communicate, and everybody goes out of the meeting and they all give a different version of it. Has it happened to you? Yeah. Narratives are so important. We learned that early on, how important we had to build the narratives and all kind of use conversation to understand it and to grasp it well and be vulnerable enough to say, look, I really don't get it, to then come out and give a better and unified message. Why? For the sake of the people, for the sake of their context, for the sake of their clarity, right? It's taking the time and being responsible of giving the messages back to the organization. Hope that makes sense. So it's a lot of communication as well. So how are we measuring progress and impact? And here's where my dear partner Rudy, are you there? You can chip in if you like.
Hello. Okay, Gaby, thanks.
So Rudy is part of this people analytics pioneers, right? And we say pioneers because there's no other people that does what they do in Roche. And we're talking about, how many people are we at Roche? 100,000, 111,000, something like that.
Almost 200, almost 200.
Imagine. And this team working with Rudy, we knew that we were going to do something that has never been done before. And for the person that asked, how many times did you have to optimize? Gosh, have we had to optimize people analytics, right, Rudy?
Totally. I can even count them.
Yes. But what we got to was to a point where we knew, okay, we have all this data of feedback for the whole organization. What are we going to do with that? What patterns can we get? What tendencies can we get with that? Then there was another level of people analytics that are called intact teams. And intact teams are a group of coaches, of 2 coaches that go and sit in meetings, very specific meetings, and just observe. And we have a special template where they would look into leadership, systems thinking, psychological safety, and toxins, and any reactive or creative tendency as a whole, as a relationship. And they would give us their observations. How is this team doing? And what we are intending there is not not this controlling. It's more, we need flags of how are we doing? What is going well? What needs to, what do we need to volume up? What do we need to get more focus on? So intact teams we put them now very randomly, and they're just observing, but we get the data back. And then that data gives us insights again, right? And then there's this third component of the measuring, that is the 5 core team members, which Erin is part of that, and that we do team coaching, individual coaching, intact teams, and EVOKE modules. So in all those different lanes, we're starting to see patterns. And then we ask to each other, okay, what are we hearing, sensing, seeing in the system? And how do we take some key insights of what we want to reveal back to the organization? So this is a macro level of revealing the system to itself with those 3 components.
Right. Gaby, I'm going to bring this particular question forward here right now. Red is asking, he says that he suspects that not everyone is making the change. How is leadership taking responsibility to identify those folks and coach them or move them?
It's becoming so obvious, when there's so much focus on mindset change, it's becoming so obvious those that are not making the change. Even the system itself start to identify it, right? And leadership is taking, and I think this is very important. When I said radical responsibility, it wasn't only about the GM. It's about the 16 people. I know it's a big leadership team. It's about the 16 people or 17 that are sitting in that leadership team, which I also sit in. All of them are, I would say, ambassadors. They come into the modules, they do the work, they do the feedback, they sit in, and we can have the conversations. The communication is open, and the willingness to, and yet they're growing too. I'm growing too. They're growing. We're all growing, right? I don't know if that responded to the question.
Even your coaches, as we learn to
Yes,
sense, adapt
they're
what's
going
there, we're
too.
like, okay, right.
Right. And we're constantly in contact saying, okay, this happened and we've seen it here. What do we do? Right. I'm so grateful to have 5 people that I can brainstorm that have similar backgrounds as I do. And we can put in a case in the center and say, what is best for this relationship? So necessary to have people to share this with. And when we identify those emergent needs, gaps, or opportunities, are exactly combining all this. Is it messy? Yeah, it is messy. Is it simple? No, it's not simple. But that's what it means to also be a pioneer. You get messy and you have to try things and see how it works, right? Anything to add, Rudy?
Thanks, Gaby. It was a wonderful explanation about people analytics driven mindset. Maybe just to add and to respond the question that Wayne had, I guess it was Wayne, about how we measure it. Basically, it's a scale from the commitment. The individual commitments are not evident yet, or that are always evident in the people. The coaches use the same scale, of course, in a different instrument to capture data. And we complement it, or we compare it with the feedback process. This feedback process is about the individual commitment that they do regarding LCP or your leadership skills. So that's how we obtain the data. Mm-hmm. Just to answer the question that Wayne had. That's it.
I can see his thumbs up, so it was. Thank you, Wayne, for asking.
And Rudy, thank you for attending tonight, because you made the conversation around that data side so much richer.
Pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Rudy.
You're welcome.
Rudy knows that I absolutely love working with them, because it's just, it's exciting to work on something that nobody has the answers. So you just have to start figuring out in small pieces. So the partners and communities of this whole effort is what you can see right now. As I said, leadership is incredibly important. That's where Alvaro Soto, our general manager, the enablers, which are part of the enabling functions, the country ecosystem leaders, they're our partners. Then we have people analytics, as I said, individual coaching, team coaching, Intech team, the 2 people that report to me, the 12 coaches that are part of the pool of coaches. Then what started to happen was very interesting. People started raising their hand and saying, I want to contribute to this. I want to be part of this. And it's what we call the mindset champions. And they resolve very specific challenges that we've identified. So for example, a very specific challenge we identified in the leadership circle, collective leadership, was that every team and ecosystem had low courageous authenticity. So these group of people, which are part of the whole organization, there are 18 people, they have decided to learn about the skill of courageous authenticity. So they're taking the Train the Trainer of Brené Brown. So they're going to be certified Train the Trainers from Brené Brown. And the challenge they have is how to amplify courageous authenticity within our organization. But they own it and they will develop it. And I think that's one of the most gratifying parts, when you start seeing people owning and wanting to be part of the change, right? Also, the EVOKE champions, we have a group of people that will give design thinking, will give being agile, and will give peer coaching and powerful questions. So they are going to be the facilitators of the modules, obviously helped by us by, helping them with their training and their facilitation skills and so on. But they're going to be the ones providing this. And then there's another piece that is very important for us, which are the Agile community. At one point last year, it was very clear that agility was very low in the 230 people, right? So we needed to do something, but we needed to do something that would stay, that would be sustainable. And that's where Erin appeared in my life as part of this effort. And also Dino, another coach. And they paired up and created this 3-month training on learning, but learning by doing. So it was intense, but up to now, we are seeing the impact of this community because they're the ones that facilitate leadership meetings. They're the ones that facilitate all the co-creations between enabling functions and ecosystems. They're the ones that are basically mentoring. They're also providing, designing the EVOKE modules for being Agile and doing Agile. So what they have done from being to not knowing what it was and to now knowing what it was, becoming almost also an expert in it, to building a community, a platform, and services. And they have catalogs with the different services, right? It's just amazing. And we're talking from June last year, Erin?
It was June when we officially started, when Dino and I kicked that off. Yeah.
Do you want to add anything else that I haven't mentioned?
Just for clarification, everyone, we met with these teams for 3 hours, twice weekly, and they had time in between those sessions to really practice what they were doing and come back with even more questions. What Gabby's talking about, where you had these individuals and the teams begin to pick this up and practice it on their own, where they were taking leadership on this, they were taking it forward. I do believe, Gabby, that that's key to why you're seeing such a widespread systemic shift.
Yeah. And I think most of our approaches are like that. We all learn by doing. We all do, we need to navigate also the fact that we want these skills to be sustainable and to stay, right? That everybody takes that ownership and becomes that. As I said at the beginning, that they start becoming that change that they want to see, that they become versed at all these different skills. So yeah, it's still today we see the impact, right? So I'm finalizing right now. So with learnings, the biggest learning probably that I have to say is make it a priority. The GM made it a priority. It became a priority, and that's why it's worked. And when I say what tells you that it worked, right? So they just did this transformation management review end of last year. And they took all the affiliates across Roche and chose 16 as a sample. And they wanted to see different aspects of the different affiliates. And one was learning organization, mindset and behaviors, leadership. And we came as the best in class of the world and an example to follow. And I don't want to say that with not humbleness, because it's not about me. It was about everybody that put the right pieces in it to work like this. But again, if you don't have the preconditions, this is not for you. Maybe a different way, a different toolbox, a different how is for you. For this work, you need to make it a priority. Develop a systemic muscle and go together. And you need visionary leadership. I think I have the pleasure of working with Alvaro, which is a true living representation of visionary leadership. He sees the change, he sees the impact, he sees what is possible, and he knows that we're just half the way. And then the integration of the context, because, I think all of us have worked with skills or have given trainings of skills, but that itself, you can basically copy paste and send it for some other organization to do. But it's the integration of that with your current context. It's the integration of how does that work for my reality? How does that work for our reality in a team? And having those conversations and really spending that time to digest, integrate, and move forward. That's what's making the difference, I think. And with that, I think I'm done with, what do you want to evoke?
Yeah. So I was seeing a lot of questions come up over in the chat around what do the leadership roles look like? How did you interact with leadership and the like? Lonnie, I know that you had, I know at least one very good question, if not two. So I'm hopeful that I could get you to come forth off mute and go ahead and just ask Gaby directly. I double dare you.
Lonnie, come in.
I have to find all my buttons. Yeah, so I have a couple on it and they might be connected. So one was just thinking about that whole context of what you said to create that narrative, because I've definitely faced that challenge of getting leaders to speak the same, and you can give them communication points and all of that, and it seems they still go out and make a story. So would love to hear about like what tips and tools you kind of had there. Maybe I'll start there and then.
Okay, so the way to get them to be able to communicate the narrative, and it's actually pretty simple, get them to co-create it, right? So for example, psychological safety was a topic. So what we did is we started, okay, we know what it means from Amy Edmondson, from Timothy Clark. We know the theory. What does that mean for our context? If we would need to explain it for our people, what does that mean? How do we want that to be seen, right? That be digested, understand. So get them to co-create it, have the conversation so they can digest it enough that then it's clear what they need to say, right? And then they have not even a one pager. We had like three paragraphs that basically said, this is what we care about. This is how we see it happening. And here's what's okay and what's not okay. Does that help, Lani?
Yes, that does. And the other thing I was wondering, and I know some of the learnings may mention aspects of it, but when you went into, and I don't know if you had worked at Roche beforehand or if when you were asked to take this on, but what made you say yes? Like, what were those things that you were like, okay, I see that you have, like you said, the leadership in place. I see that you have this. Okay, I see that you can be an organization that's willing to change.
So I'm going to be very honest with you, Lani. When I moved from global, so I was in headquarters, right? And when I decided to make this change, it became very personal because everybody was like, are you crazy? You're going from headquarters to an affiliate, when actually people are always trying to do the opposite, go from an affiliate to headquarters, right? And I already had 18 years in headquarters. But what drove me was a higher purpose. And I'm trying to get this to stop. Like, how do I do this? Space, escape. Here we go. I'm going to tell you, I had this just in case I was going to need it, because I knew at one point it was going to happen. I'm going to show you why I really came, what motivated me to come in here. So what you see here is 3 generations of my family of women, right? So the oldest one is 70 years old here. And this one here that you see is a 12-year-old, which is my daughter. And you have 3 generations here. And when COVID hit, my sister, which is this one here, said to me, Gaby, our family really needs to process this. Why don't you do team coaching? And I was like, you're not supposed to do team coaching to your family. And she's like, no, we need it. I've never done team coaching in Spanish. And I started with them in April of 2020 until now. This photo is from 2 weekends ago. And they gave me the longing of, oh my God, I can see their change and the value and the impact that it's having. And they kept saying, this is not, we don't see this in Costa Rica. We don't have access to this in Costa Rica. We've never seen this before. And I could see the impact in them. And that's when I decided, I feel the longing urge to, now it's the time for me to go back. And at that exact time, I met Alvaro. And as I said at the beginning, he didn't know how much he needed me. He's going to look at this recording. and then today we were talking at the party, the end of year party, and he said, you know, it almost feels like destiny. And I'm like, I don't know how else to call it, but I felt an urge, and you were there, needed somebody to help you through this change, and we met. So it's not like I got to him and I said, hey, these are the preconditions. You have to do this. You have to do this. Now I learned the preconditions. Now I can tell the story backwards. If somebody else would ask me that, because it's happening, Peru has already reached out to me. Like, other countries are reaching out, right? Because they're like, what are they doing that they're getting the results, and you can see the impact in people, right? I don't know, Lani, did that help?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's that whole, like, sometimes you do just lead with purpose and lead with that leadership and go together. And then now you're figuring out, okay, we need to make sure these things are in place. So
Yes,
yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I love it.
Larry, I saw several questions from you around leadership, taking responsibility to, no, I'm sorry, there was one before that, the chat moved on me. But Larry Bach, you had some questions around leadership as well. And I'm curious if I could get you to come forth and ask that question.
Sure, thank you. And Gabby, thank you very much for your presentation. I talked about the different modules that you bring to bear. My question centered though around how do you talk to leadership at the beginning to find out what their problems may be so that you know which modules then you need to invoke, if you will, bring to bear to solve their challenges.
So you're actually bringing a very important point. I sit with the leadership, so I am constantly hearing the business meetings, and this is the commitment they have. We do 2 business meetings, so every Friday there's one business meeting. Then the second week there's a second one, and the third one is called systemic leadership. And in systemic leadership, the only thing we do is discuss challenges, bring real cases, have discussions about how is our leadership going, what needs to change, what needs to evolve. So there's a whole meeting dedicated to just the relationship and how they are as leaders, right? And because I sit at that level, and I'm also working with EVOKE and listening to what's happening to all the teams, there is this maybe advantage, I would call it like that, an advantage that I start identifying patterns and I bring it back, right? I reflect it back. It's revealing the system to itself. You reflect it back and then they're like, oh yeah, and we're seeing this from here. Okay, so what needs to happen from there, right? So there's like this link between me, the leadership, what's happening, and then I have these amazing 5 coaches, which are constantly telling me, there's a lot of patterns constantly coming out. But I would say I learn more patterns, Larry, from the people, from the conversations in EVOKE, than from leadership.
Thank you. That helps.
Yeah.
I'm seeing another really good question. Lonnie, I think you're still on voice. Did I get you to mute? Diego, I'm seeing a really lovely question from you over in the chat as well. And I'm wondering if I could bring you forth to ask that. And Diego, you're still on mute if you're trying to ask it.
So I'm here. I suppose that many people were scared in feeling trouble. Did you handle with people who use the social field to show that they are all in, but they are not?
Gabby, were you able to get the question? Because I know he broke up just a little bit there in the middle. Diego, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to read your question as you asked it over in the chat. So we don't have an audio skip. Okay. Diego says this: I suppose that many people were scared and feeling in trouble about the process. How did you handle people who use their social field to show that they were all in, but actually they were not?
So I'm sure there was tension before we started the process. I'm sure, like everything. What's this going to be like, and how is it going to feel, and what does that mean for me, right? And there's an extra, the reason why a lot of our sessions and the big sessions that are the beginning is a lot about understanding our own humanity and who we are, more than just the professional that is here, but how integral we are, right? And that is so crucial to create that safety net and to provide those key principles, like who knows what's right or wrong. Everybody's right only partially. What does that mean? Let's have a conversation of that, right? These key principles, systemic principles, almost help you build that container, right? Plus you build the container with them. So that tension, I think they come in with the tension, but then it becomes actually the space where now today, EVOKE is a space where they come and they actually tell you the challenges, because they're like, well, we know this is a safe space, right? And they will tell you the challenges, right? Now, has it happened that some people have this, I'm in, but I'm not? Probably. And we've seen people leave as well. And as I said at the beginning, it becomes more obvious. And it's incredible. I never expected that part, how obvious it becomes when you see in a group of 12 people, 10 that are very, very committed, have this purpose, and they're focusing and they're working on it. And then it's so obvious, the two or the one that is not in the same page. And that's where the challenges, right, begin. And where we need to work systemically to support the team to go through that, right? With the leader, with the person individually, and as a team. Not sure if that helped. Daniel, was it?
With Diego.
Diego.
Yeah. Diego, can we get a thumbs up from you if that answered your question, or if there's still something there that you want to work an edge on? Well, with that being said, I'm going to open up the space then to one more question, if it's there. Oh, Larry's over back in the chat with one as well.
And
Larry,
also Brian, Aaron. There's one from Brian.
Well, Brian, let's take you first, and then Larry will let you come in that way.
Hey, so I was just curious. It seems to me as you were scaling to the scale that you did across multiple countries, you start to bring in a lot of different cultures and a lot of backgrounds. Were there any big hiccups that you ran into that ended up maybe running cross with maybe how people work in that particular culture, for example? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, my question was very similar. So yes, we'd love to hear that answer.
So the hiccups of culture, I can, you know what comes to me immediately is I remember my first ever coaching session with somebody from the Caribbean, and they're like, and this person was so honest with me, which I so appreciate. She said to me, you know, Costa Ricans are known by not being able to say things straight. I need you to tell me the things straight, right? So you could already see the edge and already feel that there was something there. There was something in that comment telling me there is a president here. And what I did learn, there are some teams that needed team coaching, that we would have to pause, evoke, or everything that was happening, pause for them and do pure team coaching, because there was a lot to be unfolded for the good of the team. So team coaching is something important when you're doing this, I would say. And you can see the shifts of team coaching. And I remember having like very intense 5 sessions of team coaching until they get to the stage where they were owning it. They became the owners of that change, or what needed to change in that system. Culturally, yes, there's many different yes, there is challenges, and at the same time it makes it interesting, right? Because every culture has a different edge, and yet many cultures have similar edges, right? So I can tell you that Central America is known because directness is not normal, right? So how do you build a culture of courageous conversations or having feedback when it's not like that? And actually Rudy has a great insight here, because I remember one of the first people analytical insights that we saw, or tendencies, was that either people were being, to everybody, like rating them as really low, like they they had really low in their feedback scale, or they were being, how do you say that? Empathy ruinous. They would
Yes.
give them 10 to
Ruinous
everything.
empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, ruinous empathy, like 10 to everything. And then we had to kind of reflect that back and say, look, the data's telling us this, and this is not making sense. What's happening here? And it was that culture, and it was about having that conversation, that it was not easy for this specific culture in Central America, one more than another, to have these type of conversations, to have feedback, because they felt that there was a trade-off with relationship. That the more I would give feedback, the less relationship, the less connected I was going to be, or that maybe I was not going to be part of it anymore, right? And how powerful it is to have those conversations by just revealing what we're finding out. But yeah, many challenges, hiccups culturally. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's going to continue, right? We can't pretend that we've solved it all, because we haven't. But I think we're in a state where we are really making progress.
It's really encouraging to hear that, even though there might be different cultural backgrounds and different hiccups, we're still able to, or in this case, you're still able to move toward a common goal and still get to the intended outcome. So that is definitely encouraging.
Gabby, do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
So Gervais, I see one from you over in the chat, and would you like to bring that forward, or has it already been answered for you? And if I'll leave a little bit of space there. Would anybody else like to ask then a final question then before we close out tonight's coaching meetup? Maybe you're going to get off scot-free, Gabby, and not have one more question. Hold on.
Mike would like to.
Yes, Mike would like to ask a question. So please, Mike, come forth.
Thanks. So Gabby, if you were to go back in time, like, you had a time machine and you went back to, you said you learned a lot along the way. What would be the biggest thing you were like, don't do that? If you could, if you could jump out of the TARDIS and like go back in time and say, hey, stop. Is there anything that you would do?
For me, it's not doing this ecosystem, because it probably, think about it, when I was talking about putting yourself in the shoes of these people, suddenly every focus is about the ecosystem. Suddenly they get to be empowered. Suddenly they get everything, and they get skill set, and they get mindset, and they get that. And then the enabling functions are like, and us? So now we're second place, or now we are here. And now they start talking different, start doing different. So I would say, no, don't do that to the organization. Take them together. A transformation means giving to all the same opportunities.
Cool. Great
question. In order we can speak in same language, all the teams, right? In order that we can the narrative can resonate between all of us. So that could be a very stop, don't do that. Let's start with everyone.
That's a great point, Rudy. Thank you for bringing that in, because obviously, right? So we were talking to ecosystems, and they were hearing this, and they were super inspired and in the purpose. And then the others are like, this doesn't make sense. Right? We're behind. We're not giving the same opportunities. So that inclusiveness, and I want to be clear with this before I leave this meetup, is today everybody is part of EVOKE, and I'm telling you that the receptionist, the person that is the driver of the GM, is part of this program until the GM. And this is something we're super proud of that inclusiveness, because everybody deserves to be part of this, all of them, without exclusion. So yeah, with that, I'm I'm done. I'm completed, like they say in quack.
Okay, but Lauren just asked, maybe it's a question then. Is there anything specific that you can share with us about what tactical things you did to create a shared language?
It seems like it resonates a lot to this team.
Yeah, I can help
go
a bit
for
with
it.
that.
Erin, go.
Lauren, part of that was because Dino and I went in as a first wave a bit with so much of that agile coaching for 3 months up front. And they were starting to hear, you know, what's a powerful question look like? How are you thinking about that? And we'd reflect that back to the system. I think that laid the groundwork for that shared vocabulary, that shared language, where it was becoming part of the culture and part of how people thought about the work that they were doing. And these people would then be out in their, you know, in the individual countries, in those ecosystems, and they'd be talking about this work that they were doing over here. And it kind of had this ripple effect, to go back to that EVOKE image where, you know, the ripple outwards and the like. And that was really important. But then by the time you combine, you know, the team coaching aspect, where you're, again, you know, reinforcing that groundwork, the individual coaching where you're reinforcing and building on that groundwork, you know, that shared language really just builds from that point. Did I miss anything?
Also, another tactical thing maybe is choose the skills, right? Because one thing we do amongst the 5 coaches is, okay, if we're going to go for feedback, there's so many models right now, right? You can choose, if you want, you can go for 25 of them, but we need one that will help our purpose, show that one, get them well, and work with that one. Because what matters is not so much that one, it's the conversation of why is that not happening? What is my individual edge to feedback? And how do I want to be with that? And what is possible for me from there, right? So we decided SBI, something so simple as situation, behavior, impact, and next steps. But it works. So we choose very intentionally what are the skills. And what we're doing new, this is another tactical tip, is that we're piloting with the LT. So conflict,
leadership team. Explain LT. Leadership team.
Leadership team. So decision making, conflict, and responsibilities that are new modules that are going to come in because we saw the necessity of those modules that needed to be created. We're piloting with the leadership team. So we get them to be the guinea pigs first, give us feedback, and then bring even better module to the organization. And by then they already have it integrated. So they're going to help with the narrative and the context.
Okay, everyone, I'm really meaning at this time, that was the last question I'm going to put forth to Gaby. But I'm seeing over in the chat that people were wondering how to connect with Gaby. So I put her LinkedIn profile over in the chat. Reach out to her there. I'm certain Gaby would love more connections. She just doesn't know it yet. So with that, everyone, I'm going to share my screen again really quickly. Next month, please come back where Rob Purdy will be talking about being agile. Mindset drives behavior and behavior drives results. And Sid, could you give like a 2-second snippet more in depth on Rob's work there?
Absolutely. Rob's been working a lot with the Arbinger Institute, if any of you are familiar with that, and they focus a lot on the outward mindset. And it's been, I've followed along with some of his work. It's been really fascinating. And I think that it will be relevant to a lot of us here on the call. So please join us. And Rob is fantastic and you'll love his talk.
And with that, everyone, thank you for coming. If you have questions, feedback, just need more information, anything and the like, please feel free to connect with both Sid and me over on LinkedIn. We're happy to field questions and the like. But we are here the first Monday of every month at this time, and we're really pressing hard to bring you great speakers that are really going to expand Agile coaching, how we go about it, that organizational aspect, the transformation side of things and the like. So with that, everyone, thank you. We will see you next month.